G'day everyone, welcome back to Podcast Highlights. This week we're going to be taking a look at a podcast me and Marius did in episode 26, which was with Mike Holden. He is a fascinating man. This is one of my favourite podcasts, going all the way back to, I believe, was May. But we talked about some really interesting stuff. He's recently made a shift from the statistical side of betting over to profiling football managers. And once he's got a really good grasp of the personality type of a football manager, he then uses that to place his bets in a way and try and beat the bookmakers based on psychology and knowing more about the emotional side of football rather than the statistical shift that we've seen in the last couple of years. So I hope you guys enjoy this one. As always, you can listen to the full episode. I'll leave a link above me right here. But please make sure before you do that, subscribe to our channel and click the bell so you get a notification every time we post a video like this.
It is a scam when you don't allow everyone to operate on fair terms.
We are the Robin Hoods of sports betting. We take something back from the rich bookies and enable our customers to beat them instead.
At the very beginning as a punter, when I first started embracing psychology, it would have been on the level of motivation. What motivates teams? Not necessarily distinguishing one team from another, just, team loses a derby game one week, is the reaction the following week, because, and it kind of gets more and more sophisticated the longer you do it. You're trying to look into different perspectives. So, you take that example. To take the very first example, that I probably ever had was, at a very basic level, motivation is about carrot and stick. And, you have a manager comes out after a defeat and absolutely berates his players in the media, comes out, does the angry thing, and then you expect a reaction the following week. I mean, that's probably the most basic thing. I'm probably going back 20 years when I was looking through newspapers to see which managers had lost the plot on the last performance, and then think, right, let's track their next game and see if he gets the reaction he wanted. Then it becomes more and more sophisticated, so then you're looking for different scenarios. Like I say, derby games might be one that's a particular trigger point. Certainly the further down the leagues you go, to lose to your local rivals if you're a League Two side's a big deal. It's not something that the fans get over lightly, because you're going to finish mid-table in League Two, then 2 games against your local rivals are really important. And especially if you let yourself down with your performance, don't just lose the game, but don't turn up either. So it just gets more and more sophisticated the more you go. So it would start, for me, it started on a level of those kinds of scenarios, but gradually over time, I've always been fascinated by managers and their leadership styles. So I would begin to distinguish that this isn't just all teams that do this in all situations. Some managers will get a reaction out of a team better than others. And some managers will take the softly approach and the carrot approach rather than the stick. And that's when they get the reactions and so on. And then you just begin to pay a lot of attention to just the managers. Manager does this, the reaction is this kind of chain of thought. And just build up more and more sophistication to it. So now I'm at a level where I've come to manager profiling, because you just, as you increase your understanding over time, you're looking for more and more nuance to what it is that you're doing, and that's what Myers-Briggs as a typology system has brought for me in recent years, and that's it's given me a framework that I already had kind of a vague framework in my own head of the way I thought things worked, and then all of a sudden, I read up on this framework that already exists in Jungian psychology, and thinking, hang on, there's so much of what I do here is you can just kind of plug it in and go with it, or in Myers-Briggs terms. So that was where the fascination came about, and I've just probably about 4 or 5 years ago discovered it on a level that was kind of enjoyed reading about it. The last 2 years it's gone to a different level, because I've gone to the US doing courses and gone through a certification process to learn how to profile people in like an interview context, and how to passively profile people who you're not in the room with, who you can watch a video of someone and try and work out their personality type. So I've gone really, really deep on it, and I'm only going deeper during lockdown with the pandemic. So yeah, it's exciting. It's just what has always fascinated me.
So you got a Myers-Briggs sort of profile for every single manager then?
I'm getting there, yeah. I kind of passively profiled managers for the past 12, 18 months anyway. But now the past 4, 5, how long have we been in lockdown? Since the middle of March, so 2 months. I've basically been transcribing. I've got a big database. I keep managers' interviews every weekend. All the managers across England, across the 4 divisions, I'll record the audio interviews off, whether it's on the YouTube channel of the club page or the official website or the local BBC radio stations and things like that. I'll go and track down these manager interviews. I'll record them and keep them all on file. So I've got like 2 seasons worth now of manager interviews. And the past 2 months, I've basically just gone through transcribing interviews because I've realised that it's one thing thinking what you see in or hear whether it's an audio or a video. It's one thing. Your first impressions is one thing, but when you actually see the concrete words down on the page, then you begin to see the actual function speaking of what's probably going on in their mind as they're saying those words. And sometimes, the way they come across, they can be quite, people's words can belie the image that they're trying to portray and stuff like that. So I'm beginning to see those kinds of nuances now, so really enjoying that.
How do you implement this in betting? I don't know if you have done this so far, but how do you get... I'm just trying to think of an example off the top of my head. Like, how do you... Say you've got a manager, you profiled him over however long, and you in your head you think you've profiled him into this category. So let's just say maybe you think he's an emotional manager, let's just say. I mean, there's probably something more deeper that you can categorize this person into, but let's just say he's something like an emotional manager. How do you then take that manager and implement it into the betting market?
Well, this is going to be kind of it has been this season so far. I have been on a very surface level trying to find these patterns and make sense of these patterns, and I've got some theories that at this stage I need to get to the bottom of, because if I've got a huge edge, then I don't want to be sharing it all out straight away. But I mean, it's some basics of if an emotional manager is put in certain situations, it depends what they're dealing with. If they're dealing with emotional managers, might struggle with logistical problems, whether that's a lot of matches in a short space of time, or whether it's pressure coming from outside from supporters, and some managers are more sensitive than others to even social media. You go into the lower divisions, League 1 and League 2. I'm trying to think of an example that I can pull out that's just kind of quite recent and fresh in my memory. I know one manager in particular, like John McGreal at Colchester, has always been very sensitive to what's being said on social media, what's being said on local radio stations, in the phone-ins and stuff like that. And quite regularly he'll refer to it in his interviews that, outside of Colchester, nobody really knows what's been going on at Colchester that week in the lead up to the game. But to him, it's this big deal that, it's been part of our team talk, what's being said in the past 7 days. And you're thinking of in my head, I'm thinking he's probably just talking about a radio station that's just had a couple of hundred viewers, like a couple of hundred listeners on a Tuesday night to a phone-in. And he's taking this stuff really seriously, and he's using it in his team talks and things like that. So I guess that's one example of how a more emotional type manager might, react to things. So if that's the case with Colchester, I guess you want to be keeping abreast of what's being said locally. That matters more than a club where the manager's a logical manager who's just watered off a duck's back when the fans are, disapproving or whatever in those circles.
Do you think the bookies are doing this, mate? Do you think they've gotten to this level of research yet in terms of psychology and stuff like that? I could assume that they factor into their odds the fact that, say, Mikel Arteta got sacked this week, Arsenal got a new manager. I assume they're going to factor that into their odds. But in terms of like press conferences and maybe little things that you're picking up on, do you think they're compiling odds based on that?
I don't at all, no, and I don't think the market is. I don't think the biggest syndicates in the world are necessarily doing it. I'm seeing no evidence of it. I'm I mean, obviously they keep their secrets to themselves, so you'll never know for sure. But I think it's. I have spoken to a few people who are part of syndicates, who run syndicates and things like that, and I know, putting the feelers out on that, I don't think many people. I think psychology is probably the next big frontier that, because there's so much sophistication around data analysis now that the next big job is, okay, how can we look into psychology, and which is why I've been attracted to it myself and why I'm so drawn to it, because I do think it will be, the next cycle. We've been so data heavy for the past 10 years, last 6 or 7 years, but more and more so as each year progresses, that I think the cycle will turn again, and there'll be new methods come, and this could be one, and this is kind of why I want to be right at the forefront of it.
And have you thought about replicating this across any other sports, mate, outside of football? I don't know if you're a fan or you follow many other sports.
I think there is huge potential in other sports, and this comes down to personality. The problem for me is it doesn't suit my personality type to spread myself thin across. I'm an introvert. Introverted intuition's my driver state. I like to go deep on one particular subject and go deeper and deeper and deeper all the time. I
love how you profiled yourself, mate.
Say again, sorry.
I love how you profiled yourself.
Well, it's one of the first things you have to do, I think, is understand your own weaknesses when it comes to betting. But yeah, so I think individual sports especially, I mean, you think of snooker, for example. You think snooker's all mental, and if you're playing, you get a night's sleep, and you're from a quarter final into a semi-final into a final, and all you've got is a night's sleep between it, and you're stewing on whatever you're stewing on between days and between sessions. I would imagine the potential there is huge. I don't know how big snooker markets are and what size bets you can get on. Same goes for tennis, golf, things like that. I just think there's huge potential for it, but I'm not necessarily the guy for it. But yeah, if anyone wants to make me an offer, I'll franchise the model out and see what they can do with it. But